Welcome, zombie fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated. I am H.A. Conrad, here, as always, with my intrepid co host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Good morning.
This week we are on episode 47. Can you believe that? We're almost at our 50th episode.
We're going to have a cake.
We might. Um, and we are discussing the usual zombie news and all that jazz. And we'll be reviewing Wasting Away, or also known as Zombies, which was a film that came out in 2007. But before we move on, I would like to thank our wonderful friends at Squarespace. They are awesome. They support us. They sponsor our show. So because of that, they have given us an offer code for our listeners, which is zombie, and that's not case sensitive. So if you're a first time user, throw that in to the promo code spot and you'll get 10% off your first purchase from them. And I will say, Squarespace, amazing. They do a great job. It's easy to use and set up all your your platform and podcasting needs. So yes, that's it. But anyway, so hello, Stuart. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm always in awe of your adoration of Squarespace. But I mean, not that it's not
In
deserving.
awe.
I'm in awe,
In
but
awe.
because you just love them so much, and it comes through. I really
I
can feel it.
I do love them so much, and I especially love our sales rep, Derek. He's awesome. But in any case, what's up in zombie news today?
Zombie news. It's been a I don't know, not a super busy week, but there's been a few things coming out. One of those things that I don't know if it's really new news, but this is an upcoming thingy. And related to our last podcast when we reviewed the movie The Battery, a documentary is being released on September 16th. Well, along with the DVD release of the film, called The Tools of Ignorance, and it's going to include a decent length. I'm not sure how long the documentary is, but the trailer for the documentary is on YouTube, and I feel like I can even issue a guarantee that if you watch this trailer, you're gonna not only want to watch The Battery, but you're gonna want to watch this documentary because it is super endearing, and it looks like it's a lot of fun. So I think I'm gonna be picking up The Battery on DVD. Is the short end of the story.
I saw this as well, and I totally agree with you. I think as you know, I was a big fan of the film itself, and this made me love these guys even more. I thought that the commentary and the little bits that you saw, and the way it was edited together into the trailer, it was just so clever. I think these guys are awesome, and I would love to see what their next project is, quite honestly. So yeah, I guess we're both sold customers on this one.
Yeah, it's weird how that it's just it's well done. It's a well edited trailer. Just how much they hated everything. Uh,
Well, you know what's really funny is that I was kind of wondering like what time of year this was filmed, or you know what I mean, because it is New England, and the raining scenes and whatever. I did notice because there's one part of the trailer where he says my lips were chattering and whatever, and you really do, his lips were always like blue,
yeah, and
and
you
I'm
can
like
see his teeth going up, and yeah, you can see his teeth moving.
I was just like there's no way he's faking that. So I don't know. I thought it was very it's very well done. So anyway, can't wait to see that. So I think we should review that at some other point, no?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. This yeah. So moving on, item number two. Next thing that happened this week was the release of George Romero's new graphic novel, which we spoke about. I don't know, a couple weeks ago, uh, entitled Empire of the Dead. And this was not a self-contained story. It's just the introduction to a larger story. I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to be, but this was Act One. Um, and I'll give you my HA. You didn't get a chance to read this yet, but so I won't spoil it. But I will talk
Yeah, you could
about.
spoil it. I don't mind.
I mean, I'll talk about what it thematically covers, and I think from the dialogue, from the plot, this has Romero, like modern Romero anyway, written all over it. It's very brazenly, like I don't know, political is one way to say it. It's very much like about classes, and it's not particularly I don't know, like hidden in its agenda there.
It's all in New York too, right?
It is set in New York, and It's a city that has come to terms with the fact that there is an undead plague. I'm not entirely sure how zombies and humans are coexisting based on the story that I've seen, but um, zombies are not really considered a huge threat in this story, even though they seem like they ought to be. Um, they are kind of used by the human population for entertainment, like gladiatorial, and they are not feared nor respected, and that kind of paints them as this like lower class, underclass, if you will, if you want to look at it through the lens of the Romero's, like class warfare sort of stuff. And they are still learning. They have all of these attributes that he gave his zombies in things like Land of the Dead. There's even a direct correlation to Night of the Living Dead. One of the characters in the graphic novel is the sister of Barbara
Hmm.
and then she like recounts the story of how that day went for Barbara in Night of the Living Dead in 1968. Um, Another element to this story is that there are vampires,
Hmm.
and I don't know how you feel about that. So it's
Well, I'll tell you right now, initially, I'm not feeling good, but okay.
and vampires are a secret society within the human society, and they run everything. And so that's another one of our like layers of the class warfare, is that the vampires are the blood sucking 1%ers of human society. Um, like I said, it's not particularly subtle how like the mayor of New York is a vampire, for instance.
Hmm.
Uh,
Interesting. Well,
yeah,
I'm going to check it out and I'll circle back and
the art is
give
good.
my thoughts. The art is I knew that the art would be good because I know that particular artist, so or I know of his work rather.
So
And
those
then
are the
I
broad strokes. I won't go into any more detail, but yeah, it's a like if you get past the structure, which I think is a little bit ham-fisted, I think the story is gonna be good as we get into this.
I guess we should also mention the artist who is for at least this particular one is Alex Maleev. So he's done a lot of stuff with Batman, Dark Knight, and other stuff that you've probably seen.
Hmm.
Mostly, I think I know his stuff from Batman, and I think he did some Daredevil stuff, but I'm not as into that stuff. So I was never a huge Daredevil fan, personally. Were you?
No, I saw the movie, and that's.
Uh, uh,
I haven't
anyway,
read that many comics, honestly. I mean, I pretty much hadn't read any except for 2000 AD because of being growing up in England. That 2000 AD was my jam, Judge Dredd, as a kid. And then when I moved to the States, I didn't really read any comics until I got an iPad, which was, not that long ago.
which is
I,
interesting because you know what? A lot of people say that because it's one of those things. Like, I mean, I read them again. I read them a lot as a kid, but and a teenager, and in college. But you do have to stay up to speed on them, especially if you want to do things issue by issue instead of in trade paperback.
mhm.
And then, as an adult, it's like you don't really have as much time to run off to Midtown Comics and grab everything when it comes out. So I think that the iPad has revolutionized that, and I think brought new comic book fans and graphic novel fans into the fold. But it also, I think, kind of continues. People are able to read them and get into them a little bit earlier because they're so accessible. You just have it delivered. So
Yeah, it has to have exponentially increased comic book sales through things like Comixology and those kinds of apps.
yeah, I mean, I'll say it is a different experience when you're taking it in. I still truly enjoy reading the paper versions, and and it is a different way of experiencing it. But I'm definitely in approving of the comicsology type way of consuming comics. I think otherwise you're gonna not be able to sustain it. So. Um, Anyway, in other news, and this item was pretty creepy, so I actually debated putting this up. It came across generally, and I saw it, and I was going to tease you a lot since Chicago's your stomping grounds.
Mm-hmm.
But at the Lollapalooza festival in Chicago, apparently one of the concert goers had a nice sized piece of flesh taken out of him by some crazy person in the audience. And he has popped up in just about every weird news site with photos and you know, talking about how he's afraid of being diseased now. So anyway, they think that the guy was intoxicated or drugged up or possibly both, and this was during an Arctic Monkeys performance. So I had to bring this to your attention since you and I have seen Arctic Monkeys perform together before.
Yeah, and when we saw them, there was no. I don't think there was any moshing or anything like that, and that was kind of what one of the. It seemed like there was at least a body slam that happened that instigated this assault. Um, and yeah, and it's really actually it's kind of terrifying that the guy who got bitten is now on all kinds of drugs for hepatitis and even HIV until he finds out if whether or not he has contracted any other diseases from this bite.
Yes. I don't think they need to put as many photos of the bite as they did.
I like the progression. It was like same day, day after, and then a couple days later. It's interesting. Honestly what it shows is that while I'm sure it was super painful, it didn't go through too many layers. It's you know, but it was obviously it's terrible. But I don't think he didn't. He almost lose his arm or anything.
True. And then the errant zombie concert goer just wandered off into the night.
He's still
So
out there.
he's still out there, folks. If you're in Chicago, watch out. Um, yeah, in other news, there was an interesting article about the adaptation of The Last of Us, which is a video game. It's on PlayStation. So I don't think you had mentioned you hadn't actually played this, right?
Yeah, it was exclusive as far as I know. Anyway, it was an exclusive release. So I've never played it, but
Um,
it's a zombie game about a father-daughter relationship, basically.
right. And, the interesting stuff that the article was talking about is adapting the storyline, like what you can or what you have to basically cut out, because if you were to actually play the game like and see the full story progression, it's at least 15 hours. So obviously you're not going to be able to include everything within a 1.5 to 2 hour film. And I think that the challenge for any filmmaker with this, especially with people that are totally fans of the game, is that they want to keep the game at least in some way true to the narrative. And so the decisions about what you have to cut out and what you don't, and what you keep as like core to the story, um, it has to be a challenge, because you want to get those fans in, you want them to be happy with it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting, a few different quotes from the directors about that and the writers.
Yeah, so this was supposedly a 15-hour game. I would just also add the caveat that I don't think there's a single 15-hour game out there that would need to be told in full because
Well,
for
right.
every like half hour of plot, you've probably got 45 minutes of puzzle jumping and some kind of repetitive gameplay mechanic. And again, I haven't played Last of Us, but I've played enough games to know that you don't want to actually tell the story that you're telling in the game necessarily verbatim because game mechanics just aren't they're not what you need in a compelling story. So I think while I sympathize with Neil Druckmann, the director of the game and who is writing the screenplay and the writer of the game as it happens, I sympathize with him having to like take his opus and edit the shit out of it because that's never easy. I think that he'll end up with a leaner, more focused product at the end of this process. Um,
But hey, but at least he's involved in it and it's not somebody outside of it, so it's him making the decisions.
yeah, that's
And
that's
I would I
huge.
I would argue that that's actually just probably one of the most important things. So I have faith that he'll be able to figure it out.
The thing
Um,
I can't get out of my head when I think of like trends, and this wasn't even an adaptation of a video game into a movie, but when I was watching this movie in the theaters, I couldn't help but think, oh my god, this looks just like a video game. Was which Star Wars movie was it? They were on Geonosis. I think that's the second one.
mhm.
And Amidala is running through the robot factory on like a conveyor belt and jumping over robot arms, like in a they were building
Oh,
battle droids. I was like, oh my god, I can already see the level where they're gonna make you do this, and I'm really not looking forward to that. For whatever reason, even like then that wasn't even that predated any games that were made about it, but I think they were definitely influenced by that kind of mechanic.
Right.
Uh, the interesting thing, another interesting thing about this is that they're looking to cast. I think her name is Maisie Williams,
From Game
who
of
plays
Thrones.
Arya on Game of Thrones, or as they say on the TV show, Aya,
Oh yeah.
Aya, which I think they should just break down and become more American and call her Arya because Aya sounds weird to me. Uh, but what the weird thing is that when this game came out, the box art and the character of the girl, Ellie, um, there was a bit of a kerfuffle because she looked a lot like Ellen Page, and
Yeah, I
Ellen Page
remember this.
even mentioned it, like, and I don't know if it got into a legal thing, but she was like, I don't think I gave you permission to use my likeness. And so they had to retool the character's face to look less like Ellen Page. And now they're going to not cast Ellen Page to play her. I wonder if there's just too much bad blood to even pull it off at this point. But
Well, I mean, in Ellen Page's defense, I will tell you, it's still like it really did look a lot like her. To me, it's very clear that that's what it was modeled after. Um, so you know, it's and even the voice sounded very, very similar. So I don't really blame her. And then, I think her other problem with it was that she was already actually acting in a video game. So it's actually a very interesting legal question, or something that I guess we're seeing more of. The more people use sort of well-known actors and actresses to star in the games.
yeah,
Um,
and visually portray them as well as just their voices.
right. So I mean, I don't know if there is a lawsuit or not, but you know, it's interesting that it's just one of those things. I don't know. It it just is like, how do you sort of control that? And didn't the same thing happen? Miley Cyrus was actually, she was really ripped off. Like they used her likeness, or
It was Lindsay Lohan.
sorry, Lindsay Lohan's. I get these two
And
crazy
that
kids
was in
confused.
Grand Theft Auto 5. And it's not a character called Lindsay Lohan, but apparently I think the basis of her suit is that it is her likeness and locations that she's been and things she's like allegations of sexual misconduct or whatever that she have been alleged, t- that she's done or something. I don't know. Either way, there is a Hollywood starlet in Grand Theft Auto 5 that I think was modeled after a Lindsay Lohan type, and that's now become a lawsuit for sure.
Anyway, but I'm interested to see what they do with this. Mhm.
Yeah, I'd love to see this movie, especially since I'm not probably not going to get a PlayStation and I won't get a chance to play the game. So I'd gladly watch a movie about it.
um, so we talked about this zombie train type thing that happened, I believe, last Halloween, and this was done in Sacramento. And this, they apparently, it was very successful, so they're still doing it. Um, I have to tell you though, reading this article about the Sacramento zombie train, the new one, it seems like a really long time to be on a train. No,
Yeah, 2 hours.
that seems a little long. I don't know. And
Yeah.
basically, the crux of this is that you go on there with friends, and then you all shoot zombies, I guess,
Well, only if you
with
pay the
laser
50
with
bucks.
with laser tags.
You can opt to just ride the train and not shoot.
Yeah, but 2 hours of not shooting.
I
Ugh.
mean, I don't know. Maybe there's refreshments. I could, it depends how much you like riding on a train to the Sacramento area.
It also, you can do nighttime trains apparently. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting about this is that this was originally a Wild West type of theme train, and they basically made it. It's like the same route. So they made retooled it to involve zombies. So good job, guys, being inventive.
I like it. And I like the fact that they're like, okay, right now they're shooting laser tag guns, but and they probably still will, but they're gonna like rig up harnesses on the zombies so you can see when you hit them. I think this sounds like a cool idea, and I'm gonna be driving through Sacramento in about a month, and I was kind of tempted, but then I was like, well, I do have like a 10-month-old baby with me. Maybe that would be frowned upon.
Yeah, I don't think they'll let. I don't think they'll let the child onto the train at that age.
The death train, no.
No, but maybe I don't know. Maybe your significant other will watch him for 2 hours
2 hours. I'll be
while
right
you go.
back, honey. Just hang out here by the zombie train station. So yeah, I probably will not be doing it this time around. Maybe in 10 years if they're still zombie training.
Mm. Well, so I did not see this on, or I didn't catch this while I watched Guardians of the Galaxy, but you saw that Emmett Scanlon has a little bit of a small role in the film.
Yeah, he has a little bit of screen time, and I'm not surprised that you didn't recognize him because he has facial hair, which he doesn't have in the flesh, season two.
Well,
Uh,
plus he doesn't have that intense, you know,
he also
crazy eyed
plays,
thing
yeah,
going on.
he also plays kind of a flunky as opposed to like commanding cult leader. But the facial hair that he does have is reminiscent of, and I already talked about this on a couple of podcasts. The Killing, the character that he plays in that Netflix show with Gillian Anderson, where he's got like a mustache, and here I think he had a goatee. Either way, so he's like, I don't know what you would call him. He's like the head of the guards at the big space prison where the Guardians of the Galaxy end up, and gets killed by Nebula.
Yeah. And then, I also, when we were talking about this earlier, I also mentioned that Peter Serafinowicz is in this film as well, and he's part of Nova Corps. And he's the sort of jerky Nova Corps guy who, when they're introduced, and this was the scene that was used in the big trailer.
It's fantastic.
And he's just like, what a dick,
What a
um,
bunch of
yeah,
a-holes.
yes, and he plays that. So, and you may know Peter Serafinowicz from Shaun of the Dead as the jerky roommate Pete. So apparently, he likes to play that kind of a kind of a character. Um, but anyway, I thought that was cool. I'm happy that Emmett Scanlon's getting some stuff. I really liked him a lot. So
Yeah.
good to see that he's getting work. I hope he's in more. Well, that just about wraps up our headlines about, undead things for today. So, are you ready to roll into our review?
Oh yeah. Let's talk about this gem of a film. 2007's Wasting Away, aka Ah Zombies. Why do you think this movie has two titles?
Well, I it was submitted. Well, first of all, I mean, it was definitely a low budget kind of independent film, and it was submitted to festivals under name, and then when they released it to DVD and streaming, they changed the name. I'm not sure why they changed it. Maybe there was another film or another something or other. They thought that they could get more downloads putting the word zombies in it, maybe for search purposes. I don't know.
Hmm.
But this came out in 2007, and it was written by Matthew Conan and directed by Matthew as well as his brother Sean Conan. And I thought it was very interesting because this came out in 2007 and it was considered low budget, and the budget for this was 1 million. Um, $1 million. $1 million. And, it was just very interesting thinking about that and comparing it to The Battery, which we reviewed last week, which came in at $6,000. And, before we get into it, and I'll keep my opinions to myself, but I just think that this just shows how far we have come in sort of the ability for smaller film projects and for independent directors and writers to come out with their own higher quality films, because looking at this versus The Battery, I have to tell you I'm leaning in favor of The Battery. So I am.
I'm not
So
surprised.
I know you're not surprised. I mean, there were some, we'll go into my pros and cons list, but just the idea that that was considered low budget at the time. And, it is not, it used to be just not accessible to people to put that kind of money together to put their own film together. So I just was curious what you thought about it.
What I
Just in terms of calling it a low budget film.
It's very low budget. I don't think they actually tried to portray it as anything else. But yeah, it's a low budget. It's a B movie, and it had. I don't know. I've torn reactions to it. It was the dialogue. The script was good.
Yeah, no, I had, there were certain things I really liked about it, and I guess we can delve in a bit. But basically, I mean, it was definitely along the whole, like, we're a B movie. We're not trying to be highbrow at all. We're not trying to be, and so obviously that it certainly differs from The Battery, which had sense of humor, but definitely had very serious moments within it. But the summary, or sort of the plot of this film, is that, the government has been bad and has been working on this formula for super soldiers, but it's not working. So they kind of dump the waste, and it gets into the hands of some errant teenagers at a bowling alley. And again, I mean, this is supposed to be silly. I don't think it was meant to be a serious film. It's definitely in the camp zombie film genre, so I think that's totally fine. Um, but it did, and basically, it's the unique piece of this film was just how the viewpoint of the film. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And that basically is the having zombies be. It was basically told from the perspective of the zombie because they don't realize that they are zombified, and doing
Right.
it through the two different film color motifs. Basically, like the real world, a quote unquote, the real world is portrayed through black and white, and the zombie world is portrayed in color, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting because they're kind of wandering around and they don't know what's wrong, so they're just super slowed down, and all the normal humans are sped up. They can't understand them. They're like running around like just totally um they sound like chipmunks, like. And it was definitely an interesting film mechanism, and certainly within the budget. I thought it was clever, it was cute. But all of that being said, it was very clearly a B film. And I thought that the script was a lot better than I was expecting it initially. How about you?
Yeah, I was amazed at the amount of times I was laughing out loud to this film. To
Right.
dialogue, mostly dialogue given by the character Nick Steele,
Yes.
who was just, he had some awesome things to say, and some of the back and forth between him and Colonel South, played by Richard. Is it Ryle?
Yeah, and he's just this character actor. You've seen him in a ton of stuff. I mean, he's been in Ally McBeal. He's been, like, if you see his face, you would totally recognize him. He's just always in stuff that,
He's a
you're like, oh,
slightly less famous version of Wilford Brimley.
yes, no, that's exactly what he is. And if you see him, you're like, oh, that guy. And also there's a little cameo by Tracy Walter. I don't know if you had ever seen him before, but he's like another one of those actors that's in, like, he's been in a ton of stuff with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
And he's always kind of around. He usually plays some sort of vagrant or unsavory character kind of person. Um, but yeah, he so there was definitely a few people that popped up there. I have not actually seen The Vampire Diaries, but apparently the lead and one of the leads in this, the guy who plays Mike, is a main character in that.
I think I
Uh,
watched one episode of that show and then, yeah, did not watch it anymore. But that guy, I mean, honestly, the little core of actors was pretty good. Like,
yeah,
and there was a lot of laughs coming based on all of their performances. Mike is he's the funny guy. He's like the Stifler. I don't know, very it was well done. And the other dude, Timmy, the character Timmy, played by
mhm.
Michael Grant Terry, was also really funny. And
No, definitely. And I absolutely will admit to you, like I went when I first started watching this, I almost emailed you and said we can't review this. I did. I was like, okay, and then I was like, I have to just give it more of a chance. And so there were definitely. I was glad that I gave it a chance. There were certainly moments that were very funny. I laughed a lot more than I initially thought I was going to. So I can't, especially given that it was low budget and given that that's what they were trying to be. I think that it probably could have been cut down a little bit. There were certainly moments that didn't need to be in there, and it could have been, I think, at the very least, a half hour shorter.
Yeah, dude,
But
they basically had the same exact martyr save yourselves scene twice. Like they had it
yeah,
for Mike and again for Nick Steele, and it was just unnecessary. I guess they, for whatever reason, needed to get rid of the two leading men. Like, why were there two leaders?
yeah, I don't know.
you know, but they both had to go out the same way, and it was frustrating.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing I could see you watching this and having this as part of like some really silly horror film fest or something like that. I'm glad I watched it. I don't know that I need to watch it again, but I'm firmly behind what they were trying to do. That's all right with me. But I guess the things that I was thinking about is just it's almost like I almost wish they had tried to make this now as opposed to in 2007 because I wonder what they could do with it now.
With $1 million, I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
honestly, the biggest things there are a lot of elements that set this aside or apart from the battery, and it's like professional actors. Not that the actors in the battery weren't great, because honestly they were, but these guys just look Hollywood.
Yeah.
And going back and forth between black and white with the bright green effects and the color, it seems to have more production value in it. But I might be, just attributing that to stuff that's really easy to do, and I'm not really sure.
Eh, I don't know. I felt like that was cheating a little bit and probably used to cut down on the budget. Because the less you have to show them
Hmm.
in zombie makeup, the cheaper it's going to be.
Yeah,
Um, and they did look Hollywood, but I actually kind of enjoyed that piece of the battery, and that's a large part of what I actually do enjoy about a lot of the independent films because I like seeing normal people.
I'm not saying, yeah, that it's a good thing that they looked
Oh,
like a bunch of actors. That,
okay. Just
yeah, I
saying.
like the fact that the battery looked. I'm just saying that, like, it also looked expensive, because you get these kinds of people with the sculpt cheekbones, who look like, they're basically, this is what they do for a living, and it takes you out of the immersion. Whereas in the battery, those are real people, and
Right.
you can tell.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't advise against watching this film. I think if you're kind of up for just a silly little interlude, go for it, but I will warn you it does drag on a bit. That's all. Is that where you're coming out on this?
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was. Yeah. I agree with you entirely. There we go.
So, yeah. Yeah, so I guess we're having kind of a short show today. Given our very short review, but you know, sometimes it happens. Do you want to chat about what we'll be discussing next week?
Yeah. So, cats and kids, join us again next time when we discuss a documentary film. In fact, Doc of the Dead came out in 2014, and stars luminaries of the industry and the genre: Simon Pegg, George Romero. I think I might be making this up. I know we've talked about this before on the podcast, but it has been a
Yes,
while.
yes, and you were very skeptical of this, so I'm curious to see how you receive this. I think Mr. Nicotero is going to be on there too, so I'm curious to see. But if they have Boyd Banks on there, that to me will just make this totally successful, no matter what the rest of it's like.
I'm not seeing his name on the list, but you know how he sneaks in.
I do, I do. I really am going to start a Boyd Banks fan page. Um, but yeah. But curious to see what other people think if you'd like to watch the documentary and have thoughts about that or about anything else you would like us to review. Feel free to drop us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at sorry. You can tweet at us at reanimatedpcast. So I think that wraps this up. No?
Yeah, that's about all she wrote. Peace out. Enjoy
Yeah.
your. Have a good time.
Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thanks for fun.
Bye.